The alien ship fell from the sky on a warm summer day. Smoke and fire trailed behind it as it crashed into the mountains near the small town of Namyong. Trees broke under its weight as the strange metal vessel carved a deep path through the forest. The sound echoed for miles like thunder. June was working in his garden when he heard the crash. He looked up to see a column of black smoke rising above the tree line. He was a man who kept to himself after serving 15 years as a military medic. He had moved to this quiet place to find peace, but peace would not find him today. Without thinking twice, June grabbed his emergency bag. It contained medical supplies, water, and some food he had learned long ago to always be ready for trouble. He slung the bag over his shoulder and began walking toward the smoke. His steps quick but careful. The forest was unusually quiet as he approached the crash site. No birds sang. No animals moved through the underbrush. Only the soft crackle of small fires burning in the wreckage broke the silence. June noticed strange marks in the soft earth. Not human footprints, not any animal tracks. He knew something had crawled away from the crash. The ship itself was unlike anything June had ever seen. Its metal skin shined with colors that seemed to change as he moved around it. Blues and purples that glowed even in the daylight. The shape was round and smooth with no sharp edges. The size of a small house. It had broken open on one side where something had escaped. June touched the metal carefully. It felt warm but not hot, like it was alive somehow. He pulled his hand back quickly and looked around the forest, feeling suddenly like he was being watched. He called Othello. "Is anyone hurt? I can help." "Nothing," answered him. But the wind in the trees, he moved slowly around the ship, looking for any sign of the pilot or crew that might have been inside, when a soft sound caught his ear. It came from behind a large rock not far from the ship. A sound like crying, but strange, somehow higher and with a musical quality to it. June approached the rock slowly, making sure his footsteps could be heard. He did not want to scare whoever or whatever was hiding there. When he looked around the rock, he froze in. Surprise, a child-sized creature lay on the ground, its skin a pale blue color that seemed to shimmer in the dappled sunlight. The creature had a shape like a human, but was clearly not. Houman, its head was slightly too large for its body, with huge, dark eyes that took up most of its face. There was no nose, just two small slits, and the mouth was small and lipless. The creature had thin arms that ended in hands with 3 long fingers, instead of 5. Its leg was bent at a strange angle, clearly broken, and it shivered with fear or pain or both. The alien child looked up at June and made a series of clicking sounds. Its large eyes filled with fear. June had seen that same look many times during his years as a medic. The look of someone afraid and in pain. It did not matter that this was not a human child. He knew he needed to help. June knelt down slowly, staying at a distance that would not frighten the alien child more. He smiled and kept his voice soft and calm as he spoke. "My name is June. I want to help you. I am a healer." The alien child did not understand his words but seemed to understand his tone. It stopped trying to crawl away and watched him with those huge dark eyes. June reached slowly into his bag and pulled out a water bottle. He took a small sip to show it was safe and then offered it to the alien. The child hesitated, then reached out with its 3-fingered hand to take the bottle. It drank the water quickly, some of it spilling down its chin just like a human child might do. June pointed to himself. "June," he said, then he waited. The alien seemed to understand it, pointed to itself, and made a sound that June could almost say. "Te," the alien child said in a high, clear voice. June nodded and smiled. "Te," he repeated. The alien child seemed pleased and tried to sit up, but winced in pain when it moved its injured leg. June moved closer slowly and pointed to the leg, then to his medical supplies, asking permission with his hands and expression. Te seemed uncertain, but nodded as June began to check the injury more carefully. He noticed that Te had a small device attached to his wrist. It glowed with the same strange colors as the ship Te touched it, and it made a series of sounds. June wondered if it was some kind of communication device or maybe a medical tool. He was about to try to help set the broken leg when a distant sound froze both of them. It was a roar, like nothing June had ever heard before. Not a bear, not a wolf, not any animal from Earth. The sound echoed through the trees, making the leaves shake. Te suddenly looked terrified, his blue skin turning almost white. "What is it?" June asked, but he knew Te could not understand him. Tay pointed up at the sky, then made a grabbing motion with his hands followed by a biting motion. June understood something was hunting the alien child, something that had followed Tay to Earth. Another roar came from the forest. This one closer, June could hear trees breaking and the ground seemed to shake slightly. With heavy footsteps, whatever was coming was big, very big, and it was heading straight for them. June did not hesitate. He gently picked up Tay, who was surprisingly light, and began moving away from the sounds. They needed to hide, and quickly June knew these mountains well and remembered a small cave not far away. It would be hard to find unless you knew it was there. They moved through the forest as fast as they could, with June carrying Tay carefully to avoid hurting his broken leg more. Sounds of pursuit grew louder. Whatever was chasing them was moving fast, tearing through the forest like it was nothing. June increased his pace, his years of military training coming back to him. Stay calm. Move steadily. Find cover. These thoughts ran through his mind as he carried the alien child deeper into the forest. The small cave was hidden behind a waterfall. June waded through the shallow stream and slipped behind the curtain of water into the darkness beyond. He set Tay down, gently, on a dry spot and put his finger to his lips, hoping the alien would understand the need for silence. Tay nodded and remained still, his large eyes wide with fear. Outside they could hear the creature moving closer, its heavy breathing, and the sound of its footsteps stopping near the stream. June held his breath. Would it find them? Would it follow their trail through the water? The minutes stretched out like hours as they waited in the darkness of the cave. Finally, the footsteps moved away, the creature growling in frustration as it lost their trail. June let out a slow, quiet breath. They were safe for now. But he knew they could not stay in the cave forever. Whatever had followed Tay to Earth would not give up so easily, and night was coming. Soon Tay touched June's hand lightly, and to June's surprise, he felt something like a voice in his head. Not words exactly, but images and feelings. Danger hunter, predator. These concepts flowed into June's mind, and he understood Tay was communicating with him through touch, some kind of telepathy. June nodded to show he understood they were being hunted, but they were not helpless. June was human, and humans had survived as prey for thousands of years before becoming the most dangerous predators. On their planet, he would protect this alien child no matter what was hunting them as darkness fell outside their hiding place. June began to plan their next move. Night fell over the forest as June and Tay huddled in the small cave behind the waterfall. The sound of rushing water helped mask any noise they might make, but it also made it hard to hear if the hunter was coming back. June used his small flashlight to examine Tay's broken leg more carefully. The bone was clearly broken, but the skin was not cut, which was good. June noticed that Tay's blood seemed to have a purple tint to it rather than red like humans. The alien child watched June with those huge, dark eyes that seemed to glow slightly in the dim light of the cave. June took out some medical supplies from his bag and began to make a splint using 2 straight sticks and some bandages. He tried to be gentle, but Tay still made a soft whistling sound of pain when June moved the broken leg. June stopped and looked at Tay with concern. "Sorry," he said. "I need to set the bone. It will hurt, but then it will feel better." Tay seemed to understand the tone, if not the words, and nodded bravely. June quickly straightened the leg and secured the splint. Tay made that whistling sound again but did not pull away. June was impressed by the alien child's courage. After the leg was set, June gave Tay some water and a small protein bar from his bag. The alien child sniffed the food curiously before taking a small bite. Its face scrunched up in what June guessed was disgust, and it handed the bar back. June smiled and put it away. "Not hungry or just don't like human food?" he asked, knowing Tay probably could not understand his surprise. Tay touched his hand again, and June felt that strange sensation in his mind. Images and feelings flowing into his thoughts. He saw a world with 2 suns in the sky, and plants with leaves that glowed in the dark. He saw creatures like Tay gathering fruits that looked like glowing stars, different food. Tay said aloud in a halting voice. June stared in shock at the alien child. "You can speak my language." Tay nodded. "Learn fast from mind," he said, touching his head. "When touch you learn words." June was amazed. Telepathy was real, and this child from another world could learn a new language just by touching him and reading his mind. It was incredible. Why is that thing hunting you? June asked. Tay touched June's hand again, and a flood of images rushed into June's mind. He saw a peaceful world with floating cities in the sky, and beings like Tai, living happily. Then massive ships appeared in the sky, dark and threatening with jagged edges, unlike the smooth lines of Tai's, people's technology. June saw terrifying creatures emerge from the ships, tall and reptilian, with powerful bodies and razor-sharp teeth, hunting Tai's people through their cities, capturing them, and horror of horrors, eating them. The images were so vivid that June felt sick. Hunters, Tai said simply. Predators, they eat my kind. My people try to escape in ships. I in last ship, but Hunter, follow me here. June took a deep breath, trying to process what he had just learned, an entire civilization being hunted by these predator aliens, and now one of them had followed Tai to Earth. It was almost too much to believe, and yet the evidence was right in front of him. A child from another world running for his life. How can we stop it? June asked. Tai looked uncertain. Hunters very strong, very fast, hard to kill. My people use energy weapons, but I have none, just small ship now. Broken June thought about this problem. His military training had taught him that every predator had weaknesses, no matter how strong they seemed. You just had to find them. Does it have any weaknesses? He asked. Tai considered this for a moment, then touched June's hand again. June saw images of the hunters avoiding water. They seemed afraid of large bodies of water. And there was something else. The hunters had very sensitive hearing, much more sensitive than humans or Tai's people. Water, Tai said, they no swim. They fear deep water and loud sounds hurt them. June nodded. This was useful information. They were near a lake about 2 kilometers. From their current position, if they could reach it, they might have a chance, but Tai's leg was broken and the hunter was probably still out there searching for them. We should rest tonight. June said, tomorrow we will try to reach the lake, but we need to be careful and quiet. Tai nodded and settled back against the cave wall, his large eyes blinking slowly. He seemed exhausted after all he had been through. June kept watch at the cave entrance, listening for any sign of the hunter. He knew sleep would be difficult, but he needed to stay alert. The night passed slowly, with every sound making June tense and ready for danger. But the hunter did not find them. As dawn approached, June allowed himself to doze lightly, while Tai slept, curled up in the corner of the cave. June woke fully as sunlight began to filter through the waterfall, casting rainbow patterns on the cave walls. Tai was already awake, watching him with those large dark eyes. How is your leg? June asked. Tai moved it slightly better. He said, heal fast. My people heal faster than humans. That was good news. June checked the splint and was surprised to see that the swelling had already gone down considerably. Maybe they could move faster than he had thought. They ate a small breakfast from June's supplies, Tai trying different foods to see what he could tolerate. He seemed to like dried apples and nuts, but still refused the protein bars. June packed up his bag and helped Tai to stand. The alien child could put some weight on his injured leg, but not much. June would still need to help him walk. It would slow them down, but they had no choice. They had to reach the lake. They stepped out from behind the waterfall. The forest was quiet in the early morning light. Birds were beginning to sing again, which June took as a good sign. If the hunter was nearby, the birds would be silent. Which way to Lake Tai? Asked. June pointed north through the trees. We follow the stream downhill. It will lead us there. But we need to be quiet and careful. The hunter might be waiting. They began their journey, moving slowly with June supporting Tai. Every few minutes they would stop and listen for any sign of pursuit. The forest seemed peaceful, but June could not shake the feeling that they were being watched. After about an hour of walking, they stopped by the stream to rest. Tai's leg was holding up well, but the alien child was breathing hard from the effort. June gave him some water and they sat quietly on a fallen log. Suddenly, the birds stopped singing. The forest became completely silent. June felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. He motioned for Tai to be still and listened intently. There it was, a soft sound, like breathing, but deeper and heavier than any human or animal June had ever heard. It's close. Tai whispered, his voice barely audible. June nodded and slowly looked around, trying to spot the hunter without making any sudden movements that might give away their position. At first he saw nothing. Then a shadow moved between the trees, something large shifting position as it watched them. "We need to move," June said very quietly. No, we helped Tay up and they began to walk again, faster now, but still trying to be quiet. The lake was not far, maybe 1 more kilometer, but the hunter was between them in safety. June changed direction slightly, hoping to circle around the predator. They moved carefully through a dense patch of underbrush, trying to use the plants for cover. June could hear the hunter moving parallel to them. Staying just out of sight, it was tracking them, following their scent perhaps, but not attacking yet. It seemed to be playing with them like a cat with mice. The trees began to thin ahead, and June could see glimpses of blue water through the branches. The lake was close, but so was the hunter. He could hear its breathing growing louder as it moved closer. He felt Tay tense beside him. "Run," June said, suddenly pushing Tay forward toward the lake. Gothe broke into a run, Tay limping but moving surprisingly fast on his injured leg behind them. The hunter roared that same terrifying sound that had frozen them before it burst from the trees, a massive reptilian creature with powerful legs and a long whip-like tail. Its yellow eyes fixed on Tay with hungry intent. The lake was just ahead, the water sparkling in the morning sun just a little further and they would reach safety. June urged Tay on, staying between the alien child and the pursuing hunter. He could hear the creature gaining on them, its heavy footsteps shaking the ground. Just as they reached the edge of the trees, the hunter lunged forward. June felt something sharp graze his back as he pushed Tay out of the way. The hunter had missed them, but barely. It skidded to a stop and turned its massive head toward them, its jaws opening to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. They stood at the edge of the lake, the hunter blocking their path to the water. The predator seemed to know they were trapped, its yellow eyes gleaming with what looked like intelligence and cruel satisfaction. It moved forward slowly, now savoring the moment. The hunter stood between them and the lake, its massive body blocking their escape to the water. June could see it clearly now in the morning light, and the sight made his blood run cold. The creature was huge, at least 3 meters tall, standing on powerful hind legs, its body covered in dark green scales that seemed to shift color slightly as it moved. Its head was reptilian, with a long snout filled with teeth, as long as June's. Fingers, yellow eyes with vertical pupils stared at them with cold intelligence. This was no mindless beast, but a cunning predator that knew exactly what it was doing. A long tail whipped back and forth behind it, keeping the hunter balanced as it watched them. June pushed Tay behind him, standing between the alien child and the hunter. The creature tilted its head as if confused by this behavior. It made a low rumbling sound deep in its throat and took another step toward them, its clawed feet leaving deep marks in the soft ground. "We need a plan," June whispered to Tay without taking his eyes off the hunter. Tay touched June's arm briefly. "I have idea, but dangerous." "What is it?" June asked, still watching the hunter, which seemed content to take its time now that it had them trapped. Tay pointed to a fallen tree near the edge of the lake, its trunk extending out over the water. "If we get there, we can jump to water. Hunter will not follow." It was risky. The tree was at least 30 meters away, and they would have to move quickly with Tay's injured leg, but June saw no better option. They were trapped here, and the hunter was only getting closer with each passing moment. "And my signal, run to the tree," June said. He bent down slowly and picked up a large rock from the ground. The hunter watched him curiously, its head tilting to the other side. Now June shouted, throwing the rock directly at the hunter's face. The rock struck the creature on the snout, not doing much damage but startling it. The hunter reared back with a roar of surprise and anger, giving June and Tay the moment they needed. They ran along the edge of the lake toward the fallen tree, Tay moving surprisingly fast despite his injury. The hunter recovered quickly and charged after them with terrifying speed. June could feel the ground shake with each step of the massive predator. They were not going to make it to the tree in time. The hunter was too fast. June looked around desperately for something, anything that might help them. His eyes fell on a thick branch lying on the ground. He scooped it up without slowing down, and when he felt the hunter right behind them, he spun around, swinging the branch with all his strength. The branch connected with the side of the hunter's head with a solid thwack. The creature stumbled sideways. Momentarily stunned, June did not wait to see if it would recover. He grabbed Tay and they continued running toward the fallen tree. They reached the tree just as the hunter shook off the blow and resumed its chase. June helped Tay climb onto the trunk and they began moving out over the water. The tree was old and partially rotted. June could feel it shifting under their weight, threatening to break behind them. The hunter reached the shoreline. It paced back and forth, roaring in frustration. It took one step onto the tree trunk, testing it. The dead wood creaked loudly under the hunter's weight. It backed up clearly, unwilling to risk the unstable surface. June and Tay continued moving along the trunk, getting further out over the deep water. When they were about halfway across, June heard a loud crack. The tree was breaking under their weight jump. June shouted as the trunk began to split. They leaped together into the cold water of the lake. The shock of the cold made June gasp, but he quickly recovered and turned to look for Tay. The alien child was struggling in the water, his movements uncoordinated. He can't swim, June realized, and immediately swam to Tay, grabbing him and helping him stay afloat. Tay coughed and sputtered but seemed unhurt, his large eyes wide with fear of the unfamiliar sensation of being in water. June kept one arm around him, keeping both of them afloat from the shore. The hunter roared in fury, pacing back and forth. It took a few steps into the shallow water, but stopped when the water reached its knees, unwilling to go deeper. Just as Tay had said, the hunters feared deep water. They were safe for now. "Can you float?" June asked. Tay, the alien child, tried moving his arms and legs the way June showed him and found that he could keep himself at the surface with some effort. June stayed close, ready to help if needed, and the shore the hunter had stopped roaring and was now watching them with those intelligent yellow eyes. It seemed to be thinking, planning. June did not like the calculating look in those eyes. "We need to swim around to the other side of the lake." June said, "The trees are thicker. There we can hide better. But first we need to rest." They floated in the water, catching their breath. June kept a careful eye on the hunter, which continued to pace along the shoreline, occasionally testing the water, but never going in deeper than its knees. The creature was patient. It knew they would have to come out of the water eventually. June looked up. At the sky, the sun was still rising. It would be a long, hot day. They could not stay in the water forever already. He could feel the cold sapping his strength after resting for a while. June said, "We should start swimming. Now. Stay close to me." They began to swim along the edge of the lake, keeping well away from the shore where the hunter followed them. Walking along the edge of the water, its yellow eyes never leaving them. Tay was learning quickly how to move through the water. Though he was clearly getting tired, halfway around the lake, June spotted something that made his heart sink. There was a second hunter emerging from the trees on the far shore where they had been heading. The two predators had them trapped between them. Tay saw it too. He made a soft clicking sound of fear. "There are two," she said, using a word June had not taught him. June asked, "How do you know?" Tay pointed to the second hunter, which was indeed slightly different from the first. Its scales more brownish and its body a bit smaller, but still massive compared to a human female. "Hunt in pairs," she called him. "When could not catch us," June understood now. The intelligence of these hunters was even greater than he had thought. They coordinated their hunting using some form of communication. The situation had just become much more dangerous. They treaded water in the middle of the lake, both hunters now watching them from opposite shores. There seemed to be no way out. The predators could wait longer than June, and Tay could stay in the water. "We need a new plan," June said. Tay nodded, looking thoughtful. He touched June's arm again, and images flowed into June's mind. He saw strange devices, the technology of Tai's people, and among them a small object that Tai had brought with him from the ship signal device. Tay said, "In my ship send message to my people. Maybe they come. You have a way to call for help?" June asked, hope rising in his chest. Tay nodded. "Small chance, but yes, if work. They come with weapons, can kill hunters." "Where is this device?" June asked. "In ship," Tai said, pointing toward the mountains where they had come from. "Need to go back." June looked at the two hunters, still watching them patiently from the shores, and then back toward the distant mountains. The crash site was at least 5 kilometers away through the forest. They would have to get past at least one of the hunters to reach it. "It's too dangerous." June said, "The hunters will catch us before we get there." Tay looked at June with those large, dark eyes. "No choice if stay in water. We die if try to leave, we die. Only hope is signal." June knew the alien child was right. They had no other options. They needed help, and the only way to get it was to reach that device in the crashed shipwreck. June said, "But we need to be smart about this." He looked at the two hunters, considering their options. The female on the far shore seemed slightly less patient, pacing back and forth, while the male remained almost perfectly still. We go toward the female. June decided she might be easier to distract or outrun, but we need something to confuse them first. June looked around the lake for anything that might help them. His eyes fell on a patch of reeds growing near the center of the lake. He swam over to them with Tay following. He began gathering the longest reeds he could find. "What doing?" Tay asked, watching curiously. "Making breathing tubes," June explained. "We can stay underwater and breathe through these. The hunters might think we drowned or swam." To another part of the lake, Tay seemed impressed with the idea. He helped June collect the reeds when they had several good ones. June showed Tay how to use them, keeping one end above water while breathing through the other end underwater. They practiced a few times until Tay got the hang of it. Then June explained his plan. "We swim underwater toward the female hunter using the reeds to breathe. We get as close to shore as we can without being seen. Then we make a run for the trees. If we can confuse her even for a few seconds, we might get away." Tay nodded, understanding it was dangerous, but it was their only chance. June and Tay floated in the water, their reed breathing tubes ready. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. They took deep breaths, preparing themselves. "Be ready to run as fast as you can when we reach the shore." June told Tay, "How is your leg?" "Better," Tay said. "Can run if needed." "Good," June nodded. "Now remember, stay as quiet as possible. Underwater sound travels. Even if the hunters can't see us, they might hear us if we make too much noise." Tay nodded, understanding the seriousness of their situation. The alien child looked scared but determined. June admired his courage. They took one last look at the hunters. The male was still watching patiently from the original shore, while the female continued to pace on the far side. They would head toward the female, hoping her restlessness might make her less observant. "Ready?" June asked. Tay nodded, and they both took deep breaths before sinking beneath the surface of the lake. The water was clear enough that June could see a few meters ahead, but visibility decreased with depth. They stayed about half a meter below the surface, swimming slowly to avoid creating ripples, using the reeds to breathe. Just as June had taught Tay, the cold water made June's muscles ache, but he pushed through, the discomfort focusing on their goal. He glanced at Tay, who was swimming beside him. The alien child was doing remarkably well in the water for someone who had never swum. Before they moved steadily toward the far shore, where the female hunter waited after what felt like an eternity. They approached the shallower water near the shore. June could see the bottom of the lake now, rocks and plants visible through the clear water. He signaled to Tay to stop. They were about 20 meters from the shore, close enough to make a run for it, but still hidden underwater. The female hunter was still pacing along the shoreline, her massive clawed feet occasionally splashing in the shallow water. June watched her movements, trying to predict when she would turn away from their position. They would need perfect timing. June pointed to a dense section of trees beyond the shore, about 50 meters from the water, that would be their target. If they could reach those trees, they might be able to lose the hunter in the thick forest. He held up 3 fingers and counted down 3, 2, 1. They burst from the water, gasping for air, and immediately began running toward the shore. The female hunter spun around, her yellow eyes widening in surprise. She had been looking in the other direction, and their sudden appearance caught her off guard. They ran through the shallow water, splashing loudly. Now there was no need for stealth, only speed. June heard the hunter roar behind them and the male on the far shore answered with a roar of his own. June didn't look back, focusing only on reaching the trees. They made it to the shore and continued running. Tay's legs seemed to be holding up well, the alien child keeping pace with June despite his injury. Behind them, the female hunter recovered from her surprise and charged after them, her powerful legs eating up the distance between them. "Faster," June shouted as they approached the tree line. They were not going to make it. The hunter was too quick. June could hear her right behind them, feel her hot breath on his back. Just as they reached the first trees, June shoved Tay to the side, diving in the opposite direction. The female hunter, unable to stop her momentum, crashed into a large tree trunk. The impact shook the entire tree, sending leaves and branches raining down. The hunter shook her head, dazed by the collision but not seriously hurt. She turned toward Tay, who was closer. Seeing the alien child as the easier prey, she lunged forward, her jaws opening wide. "No!" June shouted, grabbing a broken branch and charging at the hunter. He swung the branch with all his strength, striking the creature on the side of the head. The blow was not enough to hurt the massive predator, but it distracted her. She turned toward June with a hiss of anger. Forgetting Tay momentarily, her yellow eyes narrowed, focused entirely on this human who dared to attack her. "Run!" Tay, June shouted, backing away from the advancing hunter. Tay hesitated, not wanting to leave June behind, but the human waved him away. "Go get the signal device, it's our only chance." The alien child finally nodded and disappeared into the trees, running as fast as his healing leg would allow. The female hunter noticed his escape and started to turn back toward Tai's direction. But June threw a rock at her, hitting her squarely in the eye. The hunter roared in pain and fury, all her attention now on June. He had succeeded in becoming her target, but now he had to somehow survive her rage. He turned and ran deeper into the forest, away from the direction Tay had gone. June ran as he had never run before, dodging around trees and jumping over fallen logs, his military training and knowledge of the forest giving him a slight advantage. The hunter crashed through the undergrowth behind him, smashing smaller trees out of her way, rather than going around them. She was faster in open spaces, but the dense forest slowed her down. June knew he could not outrun her forever. He needed a plan. He remembered what Tay had told him about the hunter's sensitive hearing. Maybe he could use that to his advantage. He changed direction, heading toward a part of the forest where he knew there was a steep ravine with a small river at the bottom. The rushing water would make noise that might confuse the hunter's hearing. The hunter was gaining on him, her longer legs covering more ground with each stride. June pushed himself harder, his lungs burning with the effort. He could see the ravine ahead just a little further. He burst through the tree line at the edge of the ravine and skidded to a stop. The drop was steeper than he remembered, at least 15 meters down to the rushing water below. The hunter emerged from the trees behind him, blocking his escape back into the forest. June was trapped, the ravine in front of him, the hunter behind him, nowhere to run. He looked around desperately for anything that might help him. His eyes fell on a fallen tree that bridged part of the ravine. It didn't reach all the way across, but it might give him a chance. The hunter approached slowly, now savoring her victory. She knew he was trapped. Her yellow eyes gleamed with a cruel intelligence. She made a sound that almost seemed like laughter, a chittering noise that sent chills down June's spine. With no other option, June jumped onto the fallen tree and began to cross it. The dead wood creaked under his weight, threatening to break at any moment behind him. The hunter roared in frustration. She tested the tree with one foot, but it shifted dangerously under her greater weight. June moved as quickly as he dared across the unstable bridge. The rushing water far below. He was about halfway across when he heard a terrible splintering sound. The tree was breaking. He threw himself forward just as the trunk gave way. His hands caught the edge of the ravine on the other side, his body dangling over the drop. The broken tree fell away, tumbling down to the river below. June hung there, his arms straining to pull himself up. The edge was crumbling, loose dirt and rocks falling away under his fingers on the other side. The hunter paced back and forth, roaring in anger. She looked up and down the ravine, seeking another way across, but finding none. June had escaped, at least for the moment. With a final effort, he pulled himself up over the edge, rolling away from the unstable ground. He lay on his back, gasping for breath, his muscles trembling from exertion. He had made it, but for how long? The hunter would find another way around eventually. June forced himself to his feet. He needed to keep moving. He had to find Tay, or at least draw the hunters away from the alien child, to give him time to reach the ship and activate the signal device. In the distance, he heard another roar. The male hunter had joined the female. They were communicating, coordinating their efforts. June knew he was now being hunted by both predators. He began moving through the forest again, staying close to the ravine, hoping the rushing water would mask his sounds as he walked. June wondered if Tay had made it back to the ship, yet the crash site was still several kilometers away, and the alien child was injured. Even if his leg was healing quickly, June hoped that Tay would be able to activate the signal device before the hunters found him. After walking for about an hour, June found a place where the ravine narrowed enough that he could jump across. He needed to circle back toward the crash site to find Tay. He had done his job distracting the female hunter. Now he needed to rejoin his friend. June prepared to jump across the narrow gap. He heard a sound that made his blood freeze. The male hunter was on his side of the ravine. Somehow it had found a way across. The hunters were smarter than he had thought, much smarter. June ducked behind a large tree, his mind racing as he tried to think of a new plan. He was exhausted, hungry, and alone against two intelligent predators. The odds were not in his favor. June pressed himself against the tree, trying to quiet his breathing. The male hunter was close, very close. He could hear it sniffing the air, searching for his scent. June was trapped with the ravine on one side and the hunter on the other. He needed a plan, and fast. He looked around desperately for anything that might help him. His eyes fell on a thick branch lying nearby. If he could create a distraction, maybe he could slip away while the hunter investigated the noise. It was a simple plan, but it might work. June waited until the hunter moved slightly farther away. Then he grabbed the branch and threw it as hard as he could in the opposite direction. It crashed through the underbrush, making a loud noise. The hunter immediately turned toward the sound, its head jerking up alertly. Now was his chance. June moved quickly but quietly away from his hiding spot, keeping low and using the trees for cover. He headed in the direction of the crash site, hoping to find Tay before the hunters found either of them. The forest was growing darker as evening approached, which helped hide June's movements but also made it harder for him to see where he was going. He stumbled occasionally over roots and rocks, his exhausted body protesting every step after. About an hour of careful movement, June began to recognize landmarks. He was getting closer to the crash site. He could see the broken trees where the alien ship had carved its path through the forest. Hope rose in his chest. Maybe Tay had made it. Maybe the signal device was already working. As June approached the clearing where the ship had crashed, he moved even more cautiously, staying hidden in the trees and watching for any sign of the hunters or Tay. The ship looked the same as when they had left it, the strange metal still glowing with those shifting colors even in the dim light. June scanned the area carefully before moving into the open. He saw no sign of the hunters, but also no sign of Tay. Had the alien child made it here? June, worried that something might have happened to him. Cautiously, June entered the clearing, approaching the damaged ship. He called out softly, "Tay, are you here?" For a long moment there was no response. Then a small section of the ship slid open, revealing a hidden compartment, and Tay's large eyes peered out. June felt a wave of relief wash over him. The alien child was alive. "Tay," June whispered, moving quickly to the ship. June, the alien child, emerged from the hiding place, his face lighting up with joy at seeing his human friend alive. "Did it? You escaped hunters, barely." June said, "Did you find the signal device?" Tay nodded, holding up a small object that glowed with the same blue light as the ship activated, sending signal to my people. "But take time. Not know if they close enough to hear." June looked around nervously. "We need to hide. The hunters are still out there. They might have followed me," as if summoned by his words. A roar echoed through the forest. Not far away, the female hunter had found their trail and was closing in fast. June could hear trees breaking as the massive predator charged toward the crash site. Quickly back inside, June urged, pushing Tay toward the ship's hidden compartment. "No room for two," Tay said, "only space for one." Small like me, June looked at the tiny compartment. Tay was right, it was barely big enough for the alien child, let alone a full-grown human. He thought quickly, remembering the layout of the ship. There had been a larger opening on the other side where the hull had been damaged in the crash. "This way," June said, leading Tay around the ship to the damaged section. "We can both hide in here." They climbed into the ship through the broken hull, finding themselves in a small chamber with strange controls and seats designed for beings like Tay. The interior of the ship glowed with the same blue light as the exterior, casting everything in an eerie glow. The compartment was cramped but big enough for both of them. June pulled a piece of the broken hull back into place to help conceal them. It wasn't perfect, but in the growing darkness it might be enough to hide them from the hunters. They huddled together in the ship, listening to the sounds of the hunters outside. The female had arrived at the clearing and was circling the ship, sniffing and growling. June could hear her claws scraping against the metal hull as she investigated. Soon the male joined her, and the two predators began a methodical search of the area. "How long until your people might come?" June whispered. Tay looked at the signal device still glowing in his hand. Not sure if close enough, maybe hours, maybe days. June nodded. They would have to survive until help arrived. The hunters would not give up. They were too intelligent too, determined they would keep searching until they found their prey. Outside, the hunters continued their search. Growing increasingly frustrated, their roars and growls filled the night air. Occasionally, one of them would strike the ship, causing it to shudder. But the strange metal held firm against their attacks as night fell completely. The hunters became more active. Their vision clearly adapted to darkness. June could hear them moving around the ship, testing different sections, looking for a way, and Tai clutched the signal device tightly, his large eyes reflecting the blue glow of the ship's interior. Suddenly there was a loud crash. One of the hunters had found the weak spot in the hull where they had entered the piece June had pulled. Back into place was being pushed aside. A massive clawed hand reached into the compartment. Searching blindly, June and Tay pressed themselves against the far wall of the compartment, trying to stay out of reach. But the space was small, and the hunter's arm was long, its claws scraped against June's leg, tearing his pants and drawing blood. The hunter immediately reacted to the scent of blood, roaring triumphantly. "We need to move," June said, looking around desperately for another way out. Tay pointed to a small opening at the back of the compartment. "Leads to engine room, might be safe." They crawled through the tight opening, just as the hunter tore away more of the damaged hull. The predator's head appeared. In the larger opening, its yellow eyes, gleaming in the darkness, its jaws snapping as it tried to force its massive body through the hole. The engine room was slightly larger than the control compartment. Strange devices lined the walls, some still glowing faintly with power. The blue light was stronger here, coming from a cylindrical object in the center of the room power core. Tay explained still work little energy. The hunter was forcing its way into the first compartment, its powerful body bending the metal of the ship as it struggled. To reach them, they could hear the second hunter attacking another section of the hull, trying to create another entry point. They were running out of time and space. June looked at the power core, an idea forming in his mind. "Can this explode?" he asked. Tay looked shocked. "Yes, but kill us too, very powerful." June shook his head, thinking quickly. "Can we use power? Make bright light sound hunters have sensitive eyes, ears, right?" Tay seemed to understand overload sensors, not explode. Yes, possible. They could hear the hunter getting closer, its claws scraping against the metal floor of the control compartment as it squeezed through into the ship. It would reach the engine room in moments. "Hurry," June urged as Tay began manipulating controls on the power core. The alien child worked quickly, his three-fingered hands dancing over the strange symbols and buttons on the core. The blue glow began to pulse, growing brighter with each pulse. Tay looked up at June. "Ready when hunters come close, cover. Eyes, ears will be very bright." "Very loud," June nodded, positioning himself near the opening to the control compartment. He could see the hunter now pushing its way toward them, its yellow eyes fixed on them with hungry intent. The second hunter had created another opening and was also forcing its way into the ship. They were surrounded. Now June shouted as both hunters lunged forward. Tay pressed a final control on the power core and threw himself to the floor, covering his eyes and ears. June did the same, just as a blinding flash of blue light erupted from the core, accompanied by a sound so loud it seemed to shake the very air around them. The hunters screamed in pain, a sound June had not heard from them before. Their sensitive eyes and ears overwhelmed by the intense light and sound, they thrashed blindly in the confined space of the ship, their powerful bodies slamming against the walls in panic. The light faded, but the hunters continued to roar and thrash. Disoriented and in pain, June grabbed Tay and they slipped past the confused predators, escaping through one of the openings in the hull outside. They ran into the forest, putting distance between themselves and the ship. The hunters would recover eventually, but it gave them time to escape and hide. They found a small cave not far from the crash site and huddled inside. It was a tight fit, but safer than being in the open. Tay still clutched the signal device, which continued to glow steadily. "Will it still work?" June asked, pointing to the device. Tay nodded. "Signal strong. Use little power from core. Most energy went to light and sound." They settled in to wait, both exhausted from their ordeal, but too afraid to sleep. The hunters might find them at any moment. June kept watch at the cave entrance while Tay monitored the signal device. As dawn approached, Tay suddenly sat up straighter. his large eyes widening. The device in his hand was pulsing faster, its glow changing from blue to green. "What is it, June?" asked Anzerte said excitedly. "My people here signal they coming." June felt hope surge through him. They might survive this, after all, if Ty's people arrived in time. A distant sound caught his attention. It wasn't the roar of the hunters, but a new sound, a humming that grew steadily louder. Outside the cave, the sky began to lighten with the dawn, but there was another light as well. A blue glow similar to Ty's ship, but much stronger. A large, shy